Hey sinners, I'm Megan.
And I'm Lindsay, and this is Sinners Among Saints.
And we're back. Hey,
Hello, hello.
how's everyone doing? I hope you guys had a good week.
I want to give a quick shout out to the Utah Jazz. I know you're not a basketball fan, but I am
Nope.
so happy because everyone thought we were going to suck this year, and we are killing it.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
that's
they're
good.
3-1 against some pretty tough teams, actually. And shout out to one of my favorite players, Jordan Clarkson, because I've loved him for the last several years, and I've always said he's like one of the most underrated players in the NBA, and he's so fun to watch. He's money. He brings like this fire to the game. I just love him so much. So,
Oh, good. Yeah, I mean, it's our only, well, I guess we have Real Salt Lake, but, one of our only professional teams, so.
yeah. And I mean, Utah people are just diehard fans, which
Yeah.
is amazing to see. But we have a new coach. He's like the youngest coach in the NBA. We lost a lot of our players. I was kind of like, what the hell are you thinking? Like most
Yeah.
of our other fans. But it's been good. I hope they're able to keep it up. So
Yeah.
it'll be a fun season to watch.
Well, good.
Yeah. How about you? Anything fun this week?
No.
No, not at all.
Nope. Not at all. No, just trying to, wade through life. So I feel like right now.
And you feel like you're drowning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just so busy, and I swear as soon as school started, it's just so busy.
Yeah.
And I can't, there's sometimes where I just try to get through the moment, but it's good. It's good. Like all the kids are good. Everyone's good.
Good.
It's just busy. So
Yeah, I
busy.
like to have like some time during the weekends just to like relax and just chill. And I like to have at least one day in my week where I can like stay in my jammies and not do anything. But my kids on the weekends want to go do stuff every single day. And
Yeah.
I work all week. And so I'm like, I want one day where I just don't have to do any of that. And we never get it. But
Yeah.
it's especially with Halloween coming up, it's like super busy because we're always doing stuff on the weekends. And
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's good.
Yeah, we have just been talking about me and Cody just doing like another just couple day vacation or something around our anniversary because I just want to sleep in and like not have to do anything
Yep.
and not have kids and not just have to be a part of adult life for a couple
Yeah.
of days.
Like a break from adulting. I think
yeah.
we all need that once in a while.
For sure. So that's kind of our plan, hopefully. But I love Halloween and I love the holiday. It's just so busy.
Yeah. And then I feel like the next like 2 or 3 months just
Uh-huh.
fly by because you have everything going on and
Yeah.
and then it's like the next year.
That's why, like, one of the benefits of divorce is that I like that they have other households where they can do things. So, like, we're so busy during the school week that, like, I don't have time to go to pumpkin patches and to do all of those things that I like to do, but I just don't have the time.
Yeah.
And so it's nice that, like, Cody's kids did that with their mom. My kids did that with their dad. Like, they're still getting it. It just doesn't have to all
just
be
not
on
with
me.
you.
So there are some benefits of the divorce.
The perks of divorce. Hopefully I never have to go through those
Right?
perks,
Yeah.
but sometimes it sounds really nice.
I mean, yeah, we do. You have not live in, but a babysitter
Yeah.
on hand, and I get a couple days without having to be a mom for a second, which is a nice recharge.
Yeah, recharge your batteries. That's good.
All right. Well, I am super excited to do my case this week because I have a weird fascination with cults. Like, to me, it just is mind-boggling how one person, generally a man, is able to convince several people, hundreds of people, whatever it is, that they are God, or
Right.
and they generally, like, people in the cult, there's lots of highly educated people. Like, it's not just that they're going down and finding a bunch of, like, easy led
Dum-dums.
people. Yeah,
Yeah.
like, they're people that, like, you look at and you're like, man, they have, like, a really prestigious job, and they seem like they're very logical humans, and they get them to follow them and believe outrageous things.
Yeah. Like, mind-boggling is such a good word for this, because I'm a terrible salesman, and so when I think of like
me
cult
too. Yeah.
stuff, it's like I can't even sell anything.
No.
Right? Like, I can't sell. I've tried jewelry. Like, I'm not
Yeah,
a salesman,
no, me
right?
either.
At all. That's just not my personality. And so for them to be able to make people believe all of these things and then do these crazy things,
Yeah.
it's bananas to me.
Yeah.
I do not understand.
I don't either. And so it was fun to have, like, a little cult here in Utah. Now, it's no, like, David Koresh or Jim Jones, like, big, huge kind of a cult. But it's still, I mean, he still had a handful of followers. He still had people that truly believed in him.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy to me.
Yeah, I'm excited about this one because I think most people who like true crime in Utah know about this, but I don't know, like, all the ins and outs. And
Yeah.
I'm excited to hear this one.
Yeah, so I've been excited to do this one. So, without further ado, I think we'll get started. So, Charles Bruce Longo was born in Yonkers, New York.
Yonkers.
I know, Yonkers. On November 9th, 1938, to Frank and Lucianne Longo.
Lucianne's kind of a pretty name.
Yeah, and there were some
Lucianne.
that said Luann, but then more said Lucianne. So I'm
Okay.
just going with that.
All right.
He also had a brother named Dean, who would later become the chief of police in Auburndale, Florida. So they're going to be very opposite
Yeah, that's
human
crazy.
beings. Yeah.
Chief of police, cult leader.
Yeah. Yeah. Very different.
Okay.
So Frank,
Who do you think the parents are the most proud of?
well, I think I can figure this one out. So, Charles Bruce Longo goes by Bruce. So, Bruce's father, Frank, was a non-practicing Catholic and a prominent area doctor, while Lucianne was Episcopalian and a stay-at-home mom. Now, outsiders and neighbors and stuff would say that Bruce was strikingly handsome and fun-loving. But his mother would describe him as a self-centered child who thought he was better than everyone else because of his dad's job and the wealth that came with it. Which I just found to be so interesting because
That is funny.
very rarely do you see, like, the mom being like, no.
Like,
He
it's
was a
usually
real
just the
shit stick.
opposite. Like, Yeah.
It was so funny that, like, all of these people were like, no, he was fun-loving, he's so handsome, and she's like, no, he was self-centered and thought he was better than everybody
like,
else.
he's a little prick. Don't hang out with him.
Yeah, it was so funny. And so Bruce was an altar boy at his mom's church, but he was also the kind of kid that would, like, show up late to school and tell the teachers that his father broke his leg, or, like, all these different wild, like, crazy excuses, and the teachers would just believe him. Like, somehow he had that gift of just,
That
like,
charisma.
yeah. Even so much so that when he was 5, he threatened to run away, and his mom was like, okay, whatever, like, have
Please
at
go.
it. Yeah.
She didn't like him anyways.
And not only did he make good on that threat, he convinced a police officer to give him money to ride a bus and then a taxi to his grandfather's house.
At age 5, this policeman's like, sure, kid, here's $5.
No, I mean, I guess
Here's
in
how to hail a taxi and buy a bus ticket.
1943, apparently the police officer wasn't going to be like, where's mom and dad? Or how about I drive you? Like, he just gives his 5-year-old money to ride a bus and then a taxi to his grandpa's house.
Because he wants to run away.
Yeah.
That is bizarre.
So,
Police work at its finest.
right? And I mean, a convincing 5-year-old. So he ends up graduating from Gorton High School in 1955, and then he enlisted in the Marine Corps. And while he was in the military, he became friends with other men who were members of the LDS Church, and he soon began attending church with them. He returned home to Yonkers in 1958, where he soon got baptized into the Mormon religion. He was called to serve in the Boy Scouts, and everyone recalls him being like super influential to the youth in the short time that he served in the church there. In 1960, at 22 years, he volunteered to go on an LDS mission, because for those of us, or those of you who don't know about the LDS religion, you generally go on your mission when you're 18. And where he was a little bit older, he'd kind of missed that. Sorry, I just hit my microphone. He'd kind of missed that. So at 22, he volunteered to go on an LDS mission, and generally your parents pay for your mission, but he funded it himself and was called to serve in Uruguay. This is kind of where things start taking a little bit of a turn.
Okay.
So while he is on his mission, this is when he starts showing signs of some mental illness. He begins hearing voices and told the church officials on his mission that he had a plan to become an apostle. Now, for people who are not familiar with the Mormon religion, and I know what an apostle is, but I kind of looked into it because I was like curious, like the steps to get there, right? Like how do you become an apostle? So an apostle is the highest calling in the Melchizedek priesthood. So each apostle is given the keys of the kingdom of God on earth, but the senior apostle, who is the president of the church, is the only one who actively exercises all these keys. I do know there's two priesthoods. There's the Aaronic and the Melchizedek.
Yeah.
And the Aaronic's like for younger people, and the Melchizedek, you generally are like 17, 18 before you start moving up those ranks. And there's like 5 branches within the Melchizedek priesthood. And so you kind of start, towards the bottom, and then you work your way up to apostle. So it's like a super high calling. It's not just something that everybody does.
Yeah, like not a lot of people achieve that.
No, it's not like, oh, I've been a Mormon for 40 years, so now I'm an apostle. It's not how that works. So he's telling people he's going to become an apostle, which is fine. I mean, there might be plenty of missionaries who, that's their goal because they want to, be high enough. But he is hearing voices. And he also, at some point, so he memorizes the Book of Mormon. Okay, a 500-page book.
He memorized the whole thing?
People said that he memorized it and had a quote for everything. Within life, he could recite anything from the Book of Mormon. He had memorized it.
And this was on his mission that he did this?
Yeah.
Dang. Okay.
He also stopped sleeping and stopped eating.
Okay. So this, definitely some mental illness.
Yeah. So this is when people are like, oh, okay, what's happening?
That they just didn't really know.
Yeah. And eventually he contracts hepatitis, and he's hospitalized. But while in the hospital, he baptizes one of his doctors and 2 of the nurses.
What? While he's being treated for meningitis in the hospital?
Hepatitis.
Oh, hepatitis.
Yeah. But he's and I mean, it's not like you're in the hospital. He wasn't in the hospital for a long period of time. So for him to convert people that quickly was he's just a great...
That's crazy.
A good salesman, essentially. So normally an LDS mission is 2 years. He only ends up serving 11 months due to his hepatitis and their concern with his mental illness.
Okay.
So they end up sending him home, and once he gets home, he's treated for both the hepatitis and his mental health issues, but the voices continue even after he gets treated and that doesn't really say what treatment he does, but
okay.
So the voices kind of continue. So in 1961, he moves to Provo, Utah to attend BYU, where he majors in Spanish and minored in political science. This is also where he would meet his future wife, Margit Brigida Eriksson. She was born in Sweden on November 4th, 1939, to Nils Erik Bond Eriksson and Magda Dorothea Rosqvist, I think is how you say it. So Margit was also converted to the LDS religion when she was 18 by a missionary. So they're both converts. They both converted, essentially as adults.
Okay.
And she was said to be, very soft-spoken, very obedient, but easily led. So after a very short courtship, Bruce ends up telling Margit that he has received a revelation from God that they are to be married.
Oh, okay.
So for most of us, we'd be like, okay, so I'm leaving.
Yeah, like I'm out. I'm out. Because
That's cool.
No, God is not talking to you.
I've had a conversation with God. He says no, and that I should leave. But she... That was a car.
We have no idea where that came from. And
was a
that was
car
like
outside.
so loud in our headphones too that
Oh.
I don't know how our microphones picked that up. Like half the time it sounds like we're underwater, but someone's driving down your street and that was like so loud.
It like weirded me out at first.
Ooh,
I was
okay.
like, we're having an
Sorry.
earthquake? Like, what's happening?
That was like a sign from God that she should leave too.
Right? Yeah. So they have a super short courtship, and then they decide to get married. So as soon as he tells her that, Margit quits school and starts planning their wedding. And in December of 1961, they get married.
Okay.
And she was very flattered that God had chose such a good-looking man to be her husband. Now, when you see pictures, not that he's like terrible looking or anything, he was actually quite handsome when he was younger. As he gets older, he like stops cutting his hair and like gets a big beard. But when he was younger, he was actually pretty handsome. She's not.
I don't know if I've seen pictures of him when he was younger.
She's not like a lot to look at. She's kind of a plain
Jane.
Yeah, she's kind of a plain lady. But, you know, instead of being weirded out, she was like, oh, God picked such a handsome man. So nice of him.
And she was easily pliable, so.
Yeah. So in 1965, 4 years later, Bruce would graduate from BYU, and his family, which now included 2 children, decide to move to Salt Lake City. So around 1969, Bruce would claim that he received another revelation from God telling him that he was going to be the next prophet of the church.
Oh, okay.
So we kind of went over the apostles, and for those of you who don't know, the prophet of the church is the president. So he's the highest apostle that there is. So once you become a prophet, I kind of looked into this too, just because I wanted to have a little gauge. So once you become a prophet, right, you stay the prophet until you pass away.
Yes.
And then the next person, you know,
is called.
is called to be the prophet. Generally, that's someone like a counselor to the current prophet.
Correct.
Is who becomes the next prophet. In 1970, the church's current prophet, David A.K.A, would pass away, and Bruce was like sure that he was going to be named the next prophet. He was like, you know, I don't know, dusting off his best suit, like getting his shoes all shined, like, here we go. And became extremely upset when they gave the calling to Joseph Fielding Smith. So Joseph F. Smith had been a prophet for over 60 years before being ordained not a prophet, sorry. He'd been an apostle for over 60 years before being ordained the prophet on January 23rd, 1970. And he died just 2 years later at 93. So you have to understand, like, that man had been an apostle for over 60 years.
Long time.
Like, it's not just like you become an apostle and then, like, you know, 5-10 years later, like, here you are. Like, he'd been an apostle over 60 years.
Yeah.
I don't think that Mr. Bruce Longo was anything in the church.
And how old was he at this time?
This was in 1970. So.
And he was born in the 30s?
Like 32?
Okay, so most of the time the prophets are very old.
Yeah. Because you've been an apostle for a bajillion years.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I just wanted people to have kind of like a gauge of like how that all works, and like his idea that for whatever reason he was going to be named the next prophet is like so ridiculous. So when he's not given the calling of the new prophet, he starts claiming that he's God, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, and demanded that all the tithes that are paid to the Mormon church be turned over to him.
Oh, okay.
So the Mormon church was like, let me think about it. No. And you and your wife were excommunicated. So they kicked him out of the church.
Okay.
For, what do they call that? It was, I can't think of the name now. I can't think of the name for what they call when people like, I don't know, try to demand that they're like the head of churches. There was a name and I can't remember. But anyway, so they excommunicate him, like kind of kick him out. So this is when Bruce quits cutting his hair, he grows a beard, and the couple legally change their names to Immanuel and Rachel David.
Okay.
At this point, Immanuel becomes very much the patriarch of the house. He makes all the rules. Like, nobody does anything without his say. Like, he's the beginning, the middle, the end, like everything. Rachel just becomes the dutiful, like subservient wife, and he's also able to gain a small following of like 13 people. Well, that's not a lot of people.
Okay.
But he gathers like his own little like group of followers. And from what I read, they were all Mormon people who came with him.
Okay.
So all members
So
of
like left their faith to follow him.
And they all took the last name of David. So they all like kind
Changed
of
their name.
and changed their names,
Yeah.
like first and last names. So his entire family and the followers believe that he's essentially like the Holy Trinity. And the group acted as a cult and has been referred to that ever since. And so after that happens, the group moves to Manti, Utah, which is about 125 miles south of Salt Lake City. And they live like a communal lifestyle. And they begin running a knife crafting business.
Okay.
And I think one of the men like in the group knew how to like craft knives. And so that's kind of what they started to do because, mind you, like Mr. Immanuel David does not work.
Yeah.
Doesn't have a job. So he's got to like make money somehow. So they're crafting knives. And at this time, the man who taught them how to craft knives also made Immanuel a 3.5-foot long sword.
Oh.
And this is when he starts wearing it around, saying that there will come a time in the world when he will use it to lop off thousands of heads.
Ugh.
Okay.
Nope. No thanks.
Now, running their knife crafting business, while it's, doing its thing, they realized that running scams was way more lucrative.
Way more, I'm
Way
sure.
more. So they start getting like donations from people that are well-to-do in the community, and then they start running scams like raising money for things that are not like happening, like medical
Not legit
expenses of
things.
kids.
Ugh.
Yeah. So one of the members was also a 10-year member of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, and he told a bunch of the choir members that he was raising money for a 9-year-old girl who was paralyzed that had all these medical expenses that they couldn't afford. So a bunch of the choir members gave him a bunch of money.
Oh.
And apparently this 9-year-old girl was like a real person, but she didn't have any medical expenses that needed to get paid off. And like, they didn't know who he was. And like, they were like, no.
Like based on a true story.
Yeah. So eventually the FBI catches wind of like what's going on because,
Yeah.
I mean, this is in the 70s. So they were having people wire them money, right? Because like that was, I guess, like probably the easiest way then to get money.
Yeah.
So the FBI catches wind of it and starts investigating them for wire fraud. And that choir member eventually pleaded guilty to wire fraud and served 5 years in prison.
Okay.
But he gets out and he just goes back to the cult.
Yeah, I mean, 5 years in the long scheme of
it's
things
not.
is nothing.
No.
So,
No. So in 1971, they left Manti because the FBI started kind of digging into what they were doing. And they began traveling across the western states, living in different hotels and leaving unpaid bills in their wake, like just left and right.
man, the damn FBI
Right?
just ruining their lives.
The Fibbies coming after them. So one of the places they lived was the Bethesda Holiday Inn Express. They lived there for 10 months, and they paid cash between $20,000 to $30,000 in that time.
Holy shit.
Which equals, so all of these numbers, I like figured out how much they equal today because it like is even more mind-boggling when you hear like how much it is in today's money. So that $20,000 to $30,000 that they paid in cash is between $91,000 and $136,000
Holy shit.
in 10 months.
Like you could have bought a house.
Right?
A pretty nice house back then.
Yeah.
Or a couple, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. And they paid that in cash, but eventually they were evicted for not paying. And they left a bill of over $10,000, which equates to over $45,000
Oh my
in
word.
today's
Okay.
money. Okay, they also stayed at the Red Lion Motor Inn in Missoula, Montana, which does not sound like it's a fancy place.
No. No.
But they left a bill there for $5,000, which equals $23,000 today.
Okay.
So after living a vagrant life for about 6 years, they decided to return to Salt Lake City and kind of settle down.
And was this just all money that they had swindled from people and just
And-
had saved up before they took off?
And that he would get from members in the community, like members of his,
So they just kept going from town to town and being like,
and they
Hey.
would, yeah, and I'll kind of talk about it a little bit later, but like his followers like fund his entire life,
so crazy.
everything, because they believe he's God. So they just like do everything they can to take care of him and his family.
Okay.
So Emmanuel, Rachel, and their now 7 children moved to the 11th floor of the International Dunes Hotel in downtown Salt Lake. Over the years, it's also been known as the Shiloh Inn and is now the Holiday Inn Express. So the Davids' 7 children were Marcy, born in 1962, Eva, born in 1963, Frank in 1968, Deborah in 1969, Anthony in 1970, Charles Bruce in 71, and Rebecca in 1972. Okay. But they also legally changed all of their names to Rachel, which is also the mother's name.
Okay.
So the mom's Rachel, the oldest daughter's Rachel. Then there's Elizabeth Joshua, Deborah, which is just her name. That was her other name.
So they just didn't change her
didn't
name?
Change her name. Then
Okay.
Joseph, David, and then Rebecca, which is also just her name.
Okay.
So all of these kids get their names, well, most of them get them changed. The children have never been to a public school. They've never been to doctors. All the births were done at home. Essentially, the state has no idea of their existence.
They just don't exist.
Because they're not caught by the census, because they don't live in any houses. They moved around so much and just only been in hotels. They homeschool them.
They didn't birth them at the hospital, so they don't have birth certificates,
they don't have
social
anything.
security cards.
Yeah.
Essentially, they don't exist.
Yeah. So they had no idea that these people even existed. The people that worked at the hotel would refer to the children as always clean, neat, articulate, and well-behaved. The boys wore their hair in braids like their father, because he always had his hair like in a really long braid.
Okay.
The girls had long hair parted in the middle, kept away from their faces with barrettes. They were only allowed to speak to others with permission of the father. So people in the hotel said, like, when they would, because they didn't see him very often, but like once a week they would like take the kids out. And when they would see him, if they would like say hi to him or whatever, like all the kids would just look up at their dad and wait for his like approval, like a nod that it was okay for them to talk.
Okay, again, this is baffling because I can't get my kids to do anything I say. so I'm just like I kind of wish I had a little bit of his mind control.
Right?
Like,
yeah.
Please.
Yeah.
Give me some.
Yeah, my youngest,
and then all of our followers, we would like convince you to give us money and like
donate.
I would make my kids
sponsor,
like be clean and well behaved all the time. Like, right? What is that?
Right?
What?
Yeah, my 5-year-old half the time I'm like, why are you like? Are you still talking
6.
to me? Or
He's
6
now.
Oh, yeah, he just turned 6.
You no longer have a 5-year-old.
I don't.
Nope.
But yeah, so half the time I'm like, why are you still talking? Like, seriously. I'll be like, I'm still telling you a story. I'm like, you've been telling me the story for 30 minutes. Like, it's done. We've finished.
Yep. I've moved on in my head, so.
Yeah, so once moving into the Dunes Hotel, every day Emmanuel he'd go out, he'd visit local like shops, he'd buy goods, he'd chat up the owners. He like the people that worked in the hotel said that he was like pretty friendly, like easy to talk to. He was, always smiling. Like they all said he was like a pretty nice guy. Like they thought the kids, it was like, a little weird, but they seemed clean and like well behaved, and he seemed like a nice guy. And so
it's probably a nice break for everyone.
Right, yeah. The owner of the hotel said that they were like the best guests. They were quiet, they didn't bother anybody, like, and every day at the same time, Emmanuel would come downstairs and pay for his hotel room in cash. So the hotel was $90 a day, which is $410 a day.
Holy crap.
Now.
Holy, like, what?
Yeah. So, and they said he would always come down with a crisp $100 bill and pay his like $90 plus tax for his room. Okay. So $410 a day. Just wait till you like, wait till you just
wait.
Yeah.
Just wait.
They said that they always ate out, and it was always like the finest restaurants. They said, so Immanuel David was about 6'4" and weighed about 370 pounds.
Dang.
So he was a big guy. So I'm sure he ate a lot. He had 7 children.
Yeah.
They said that they required about $300 a day to maintain their lifestyle, which in today's money is about $1,500 a day.
$1,500 a day. Can you even imagine?
Yeah. So
no, like I don't even spend $1,500 a day on vacation.
No.
Like when I'm trying to live it up.
No.
Like
I get upset when it's like I'm spending $200 a day, like on a vacation. I'm like, okay, we have got to figure out.
Yeah, we need to cut back a little bit. We're living it up too much.
So they were spending in today's money, like about $45,000 a month.
Holy shit. Like my mind is blown.
Yeah. $45,000 a month for a man who doesn't work.
He doesn't do anything.
And he doesn't even have like a following of like several hundred people. There's like literally a baker's dozen, maybe a little bit more.
I'm becoming more and more impressed with this guy's skills.
Right?
And like
like as I kept figuring out the money, like in our time, I was like, holy shit.
Yeah,
how do I figure out people that will pay for all of my stuff?
Come be my followers, people.
Yeah, seriously. So everything was completely funded by his followers. Members sold their homes. They sold all their belongings, anything they could, just to provide for Immanuel and his family. Like, that's how much they believed he was God.
Oh, can you imagine?
No, like
then what do they do? They're just like living on the streets, and he's living it up in this fancy hotel with fancy meals being served to him 3 meals a day. And never doing anything.
Nope. Except for like walking around town, like making conversation with people.
Wow.
So some of the people, like there was one woman who paid just to belong, like to get into the cult. And she paid about $25,000, which is $114,000 nowadays.
Just to get it.
Just to like be a part of their cult.
So that then she can continue to give all of her money to them?
Yeah, I don't even understand. It's not like they had like some fancy house they lived in. Like what? I don't understand what they were even getting out of it. Except for that, for whatever reason, they thought he was God.
Yikes.
I don't even know. So although his followers were extremely devoted to him, nothing compared to the devotion that Rachel had for her husband. And people would say that she just like followed him around like a puppy dog. She did everything he said, like she just...
Which is like so sad because it makes me wonder like what was going on behind closed doors, that his kids wouldn't even say hi to people. You know there had to have been punishments or some shady shit going on behind closed doors.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Which is heartbreaking.
Right. So he also had friends outside of the cult. Like one of his old mission companions, Skip Danes, who would loan him money and vehicles. So Skip owned a local music store. And once he moved back to Salt Lake, he went to this music store, realized that he knew like Skip. They like kind of reconnected. He showed Skip like how he had all this like money. He would show him like, oh, I'm buying this, $1 million house like in Arizona, and he would do all this stuff. And so he was trying to make a purchase through Skip's music store for 2 pianos that were $47,000 a piece. And I didn't look up those prices of what they are for today's money, but like
damn,
over $100,000 like a piece. And so Skip said that he like didn't believe in Immanuel's like new beliefs, right? And he said he had a really hard time remembering to even call him Immanuel because that was
like, dude,
Bruce.
Your name's not your name's Bruce, not
right.
Immanuel.
It's like on The Office when Andy comes back from anger management and he wants them to call him Drew, and Jim's like, no,
that's not your name.
I'm not calling you Drew.
That's not my name. That's not my name.
So he said he doesn't believe in his beliefs, but he did say that Bruce was like a really great missionary. He learned Spanish super quick. He was an effective proselytizer. He just, he's a proselytizer.
What the hell is that?
I had to look it up as well.
Okay,
it's someone who
did you just speak Spanish? I don't even know what that means.
It's essentially like converting people. Like he was real good at converting people into their religion. So he said he really liked him, and he was like a great guy from what he knew. All of this new stuff, I'm sure he was like, what?
Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, because I'm telling you, like, I'll post the pictures, but when he's younger, and I'm sure he probably looked like this on his mission, because you have to be like well kept, right?
Yeah.
He was very handsome. Like as an adult, he has like a big beard, like real long braided hair. Like I'm sure he's way bigger than he was when he was a missionary. Like I'm sure he looks so much different. And then he comes in, and he's like Immanuel David, and he believes he's God and all this stuff. So
can you even imagine, like, just imagine if in 2 years I changed my look completely, changed my name, and had a dozen people convinced that I was God. Like, what would you do?
I don't even know.
Where would our friendship even go from there?
I don't even know.
Because I know I'm not convincing you of that.
No way. Nope.
Like, I would have your ass committed.
Yeah.
Like, what is happening?
Yeah, well, and this is what's weird to me, too, is, like, if I were Skip and I had that same situation, sure, he comes in my store, like, we chit-chat, he leaves, and I'm like, holy shit. Like, guess what he said today, or guess what he did today. But this guy's, like, loaning him money, letting him borrow his vehicles.
Like a mansion, and he has all this money. Why would he need to borrow money from you?
Right.
Like, red flags, people.
Yeah. And he never goes through on this purchase of these pianos. It's just, like, kind of set up.
Yeah, like his way in. Like,
yeah, like, it's so weird.
Yeah, I'm gonna help your business out, bro.
Yeah, and you look at him, you're like, yeah, he's kind of crazy now, but he wants to borrow some money and borrow my car. I'd be like, no.
I'd be like, no.
No. I had a weird guy at the park the other day ask if he could use my phone, and I was like, no. I don't feel comfortable with that. And he was like, okay, thank you. And then he left. I wasn't like, sure. Like, no.
No.
So in 1977, a testimonial letter would be released, and it outlined the cult's doctrine, including that they believe they were reincarnated biblical figures like Moses, Abraham, Adam, Eve.
Okay.
Okay. It also stated, now...
Because Immanuel kind of tells them this, like...
Yeah,
just so you know, in your past life, you were Eve.
Apparently.
Okay.
They also, when I read this, I was like, where did this come in? So they also believe that white people are the real Israelites and the true children of God. So they're also apparently super ass racist.
Yeah, racist assholes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, they also claim that the Star of David belongs to Immanuel David and not the Jewish people.
Oh.
So they say that
this guy is up in the night.
Right? And he's just like, and he just tells people, they're like, yeah.
Like, yeah, that sounds great. Yeah.
Duh.
I'm totally into it.
How did I not know that? Yeah. So they denounce Catholics, they denounce Mormons, they say they're all antichrists. And he also has there's 3 of his most faithful followers. He tells them that they are also archangels.
Oh.
So Matthias David, who is Sterling Peacock, that's his real name, right? It's a great name.
Okay, wait. Sterling Peacock became Matthias what?
David.
Oh yeah, they're all
Davids, right?
Sterling Peacock. Yeah. I would never change my name if I was named Sterling Peacock.
Right?
Like, no, you're not calling me Matthias.
Yeah, I will be Sterling David, Sterling Peacock David, and that is as far as I will go. So he tells him that he's Michael, the Archangel Michael, right?
Okay.
Then, let's see, Paul Chipman, who is Jonathan David. He is Raphael, the Ninja Turtle. And then, so they have...
Or the Archangel.
The Archangel, they have a Ninja Turtle, and then there's Gil Hibben, and his name was Peter David, and he was Gabriel.
Okay.
So at one point, he would send his archangels to Washington, D.C. to wait for the government to fall, so then he could overtake the government.
With 3 archangels? That's it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because he's God, so he just sends his archangels there to, like, wait for the fall, and then he'll just come in.
Did they die there?
They did not, because then he called them back to Salt Lake, because he told them he had the golden tablets that were originally, or not given to, but Joseph Smith stole or whatever. They're like 200 pounds, right? And he wrote the Book of Mormon from, whatever that whole story is. So he says he's been given those tablets. Now, mind you, these guys are all Mormons, so like they know the whole story
of the yeah.
So they come back only to find that he does not have the tablets. He is the tablets.
I identify as the tablets.
Golden tablet.
What?
He's actually 2 tablets because they were about 200 pounds. So He's actually about 2 tablet size.
Okay.
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 And so I do know at one point that one of the archangels was like, this shit is stupid. And he went and got a job at a lumber yard and bought a motorcycle and went to Arizona and opened a karate shop.
Done with the cult.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
And opened a karate.
Do we know which one?
I believe it's Paul Chipman.
Paul Chipman.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I was hoping it was Sterling.
Nope. Sterling stays.
Oh, Sterling.
And I think, if I remember correctly, I think Sterling was the Tabernacle Choir member.
Oh, did prison time.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah. So in 1978, in late July, this is where the shit kind of gets real. So in late July of 1978, Immanuel would run into Skip's music store. Now there was different accounts. One of them, or a couple of them, said that he told Skip he needed to borrow his truck because he was going to go get the money for the pianos.
Okay.
Okay, and he was like, okay, cool. Other accounts just said, like, he came in the store, was, like, super, like, kind of panicky, like, I need your truck. And Skip just was like, sure, here's my keys. And without hesitation, gave him his keys, and he was out.
Okay.
So on August 1st of 1978, a hiker would come across a truck that was parked just off the road in Immigration Canyon. He noticed a garden hose running from the tailpipe up through the window. And there was a man sitting very still in the passenger side. So later that man would be identified as 39-year-old Immanuel David. So when police go to inform Rachel of her husband's death, by all accounts, they said she didn't seem shocked. She didn't cry. She just said that he had been depressed, and that he had said that he had a better place to go. And she also told them that she wouldn't have money to bury him.
Oh.
So she was just like, listen, he's been depressed.
And she's still at the hotel?
She's at the hotel, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's like, and I don't have money to bury him.
So just do whatever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's God, so it doesn't...
Right?
I mean,
yeah. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So then later that day, she had talked to, like, a local store owner about placing her children into public school, about maybe needing to get a job to get back on her feet, and just, like, how dependent she had been on her husband. Which I'm sure was, like, kind of scary for her, because it seems like, you know, he kind of took care of, like, all the money.
Yeah.
Like, got it from the people, like, whatever. And she just took care of the kids.
Now she just has nothing.
And now there's nothing, yeah. So she called family in Copenhagen. This is where they lived. And was that in Sweden, I believe? Anywhere. It's also a brand of chew. So, but she called them. They ate chicken that was supplied by the hotel. And then she was last seen at 11 p.m. returning from a meeting with a friend about finances.
Okay.
So early on the morning of either August 2nd or 3rd, and it depends on where you look, because their grave, like their headstone says one thing, but then like there's some stuff on like Ancestry, the family search or whatever, like it said different dates. So either August 2nd or 3rd.
I hate this part. I don't even want to hear it.
The hotel manager, Jim Bradley, was working the front desk when his wife came in and said, "Jim, they're jumping from the balcony." And he immediately ran outside. He knew who it was. Ran outside, ran to the east where a crowd was beginning to gather, only to see children jumping or being pushed from the 11th floor balcony. Ugh. 11th floor. Mm-mm. So some fell the entire 100 feet to the concrete below, and some would hit the roof of a coffee shop before then hitting the sidewalk. Ugh. Right? And the coffee shop, like, was a cement, like a hard roof, too.
Yeah.
So after all 7 children had either jumped or were forced over, the mother, Rachel, climbed onto the railing and sat there for about 30 seconds just looking down. And there was accounts of some onlookers shouting, "Jump, bitch, jump." Oh. Because they had just watched her, like,
watched her push all her kids.
Yeah. And so they're
I
like...
probably would have been chanting the same
yeah,
thing.
they're like...
I mean, I'm not going to lie.
No, they're like, do it. Like, what the... You know? Because she gets up there and then she, like, hesitates.
Ugh.
So they say that, and then she lunges forward and plummets.
I can't imagine. That has to be, like, the worst way to die. Like, just the fear and, like, the lurching of your stomach. And I can't. I can't even imagine. And those poor babies being pushed by their mother.
So, and I'll kind of talk about in a second, but it seemingly pretty much all of them did it willingly, except for one. So she lunges forward, plummets to the concrete below. All were either pronounced dead at the scene or shortly upon arriving to local hospitals. All except the oldest child, Rachel, who was in a coma on arrival to LDS hospital. Now, Dr. Terry Clemmer, who is the director of the shock and trauma unit, said that it appeared Rachel's body had straddled something when she hit the ground feet first. Both legs were mangled, her pelvis was split, and the fall tore into her...
Her pelvis was split?
Yeah, and it said the fall tore into her internal organs.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Her spleen had ruptured and was removed. The doctors then performed a colostomy. Gynecologists then worked on repairing her female organs. She had an open fracture on one shoulder and a bruised lung. Her jaw was broken, requiring plastic surgery, and her larynx was fractured, requiring an emergency tracheotomy.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. The autopsies of the other bodies showed that they had all jumped feet first, as they all had broken legs, ankles, and pelvises. Witnesses also said that none of them made any noises while falling.
Oh, that's
But the
so
ME
sad.
stated that it's super common when people jump from great heights willingly to make no noise. So the only one who showed any resistance was 6-year-old Rebecca, who also had bruises on her fingertips because people said she was hanging on. She was one of the last ones. I think she was the last one. She was hanging onto the railing, and her mom had to pry her fingers off the railing.
Oh my gosh.
But all the rest of them jumped, from what everyone says, willingly from that balcony, which to me is insane. And I just can't imagine your kids trusting in you so much or believing in you so much to
jump from the 11th story.
Yeah, it's crazy to me.
So this is totally inappropriate, and I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to anyways. So one of my kids' favorite jokes is, it just reminded me because you're falling from great heights.
Uh-huh.
So what do you call a dog falling from great heights?
I don't know.
A chihuahua. Sorry.
That was a good one.
So sorry. I couldn't help it.
It was our little breath of fresh air for a second. Let's take a moment, regather ourselves, have a little laugh, and get back into this.
That's right.
In the room, police found so many weird things. So I made a list of what they found because it was just interesting. So they found a size 56 full leather coat. So he was a big guy.
A 56?
Yeah. They also found size 14B shoes. And I had to look up because I'm like, what the hell is B?
Yeah.
Apparently B is a standard size for women's shoes. Just your sorry, gosh, I hit my microphone again. Your regular size for women's shoes, whereas D is a regular size for men's shoes.
So it was a size 14 women's shoe?
Yeah, so either Mrs. Immanuel David had some large A feet, or he had some I guess, a 14 would be a 16 in men? 14 in women? No, it would be
opposite.
A 12 in men.
Yeah.
So maybe they were his shoes, I don't know, but they were women's shoes, apparently.
Okay.
There was dozens of cashmere sweaters. There's a $65 lizard skin credit card holder, which is $300 these days.
Okay.
He had spent about $27,000, or in today's money, $123,000, at local jewelers for things for the family, including watches for the children.
Oh my gosh.
Right? They said there was no food found in the room except for breakfast cereal, which they believe was what they ate that morning because there was only a little bit of it gone. So they think she bought it specifically to feed them that morning before
they jumped.
Oh. And several bottles of wine. So,
okay.
They found binders.
Staples.
Right. Cereal and wine. They found binders for the children's schoolwork. They were sectioned into current events, English, geography, history, math, science, theology, and miscellaneous. The interesting thing was that none of the binders had anything in the theology section, even though their dad was a self-proclaimed prophet and a direct descendant of the biblical house of David.
Interesting.
Right? They also had nothing in the history section except for a list of U.S. presidents. All other sections were stuffed full of work, all seemingly above their grade levels.
Oh, okay.
And people said that he was pretty smart, so it sounds like his kids were really smart as well. They said that Rachel, 15, was working from college books. Joseph, 9, was calculating algebra equations, which if you think about it, in 1978, like, just think about what your kids have learned in elementary in comparison to what we learned and how, like, much more they learned.
Yeah.
So I feel like in 1978, for a, third or fourth grader to be doing algebra is probably pretty advanced. They said all their writings were, like, extremely neat. They said, like, when you see little kids' homework and stuff, there's always little scribbles or doodles or whatever, but, like, all of the kids, like, their work was super neat, to the extent where if there was a question that asked them to underline an answer, they would use a ruler to make a perfect line.
Oh my gosh.
Under the answer.
Okay.
They said in the current events section, they made lots of references to news events, but they were usually violent ones, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
They were also beautiful artists, and they said the only thing, because they didn't have any furniture of their own in the suite, but they said there was tons of artwork all over, made by the children. And they were a lot of, like, charcoal artwork. A lot of them had, like, birds and flowers. They also found a photo album, they said, with very normal family photos, like parties, pictures of the kids when they were babies, family outings, vacations, but all photos stopped in 1969 to 70 when Bruce Longo became Immanuel David.
Oh, wow.
And there was one quote from his mother that said his first 2 kids were charming, rambunctious, like, noisy little kids. But
and then it all changed.
Yeah. And that was because they had the 2 kids right after he graduated BYU and then moved.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So it's really interesting to kind of see. It seemed like they were living a somewhat normal life.
Yeah.
Before he, like, completely lost it. Now, police believe that Immanuel ended up taking his own life, not only because he had started losing followers, but because the money had kind of ran out.
Yeah.
And he also believed he was going to be arrested, even though the FBI said that they were not near as close to arresting him as Immanuel David thought they were.
Okay.
So they were like, yes, we were investigating, we were looking into him, but, like, we didn't have a whole lot. They also said in the months preceding his death that Immanuel David was seen with a bodyguard, and that was Matthias David, or Sterling Peacock.
Oh, good old Sterling.
A.K.A. Archangel Michael. They also theorized that when his predictions weren't coming to fruition, he was also getting super upset. Some of his predictions were like that California was going to fall into the ocean, that the lightning would strike the Salt Lake Mormon temple, splitting it in 2, engulfing it in flames.
Oh, okay.
And, that hasn't happened yet. So eventually, Rachel would come out of a coma and she would survive. The state ended up spending over $100,000, or about $500,000 in today's money, in her medical expenses before they released her into foster care. Because mind you, like, now she has nobody. She has no mom, no dad.
And she's how old?
15.
15.
And her mom's family all lives in Sweden, and her dad's family, so his dad died in 1969, so before he even got, like, real crazy. And at one point, I think that was the last time Immanuel David had seen his family, was to go back for his dad's funeral. And that's when he kind of told his mom and his brother, like, that he was God, and that they were all, like, going to hell because they weren't followers of the church or him or whatever.
Okay.
And they were like, okay, cuckoo bananas.
Yeah.
We don't want to talk to you anymore. Like, you're crazy. And so he didn't really have contact with his family after that because they were like, what in the hell?
But after all this happened, nobody, like his brother,
no,
good old police chief, didn't come forward and be like,
they didn't want any of the belongings in the house.
Yeah, but
and
what
at that
about
time,
this little girl, like,
at that time, they didn't even know if she would
innocent
survive.
Little girl.
Yeah, and at that time, they didn't even know if she would survive. She was in the hospital for a few months, and yeah, I think his family just went back home. Like, I think they just kind of wrote it off.
Oh, that sucks.
Right?
That's so sad for her.
She was released into foster care. She was left with some brain damage and is completely confined to a wheelchair. But at some point, she ends up living with her uncle, Jacob David, a member of the cult. And from what I could never really figure out who exactly Jacob David was, but it's her uncle. Now, her dad only has one brother, and he's a police chief.
Yeah.
And her mom only had one brother. Leonard Erickson. So that's who I'm guessing this is.
Okay.
I'm guessing it's her mom's
Her biological uncle.
because there's no one
Okay.
else that's an uncle, like a real uncle to her.
But I wonder if it's just somebody who's like,
I
as
don't
the
know.
cult, they're all family, and so
I don't know. It
it's
just
her
says her uncle.
air quote uncle.
Yeah. So she ends up living with him. And no one really knows if the Utah Division of Family Services ever knew that Rachel ended up back with the cult, essentially who tried to kill her.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I had heard this too, that she was living back with them, and I was like, how? How did our system let this happen?
Yeah.
Like, what the actual...
I mean, as we've talked about in the past, like in the 70s, 60s, 80s, like there was not a lot of like, hey, do you got an ID? Hey, can we check it? Like they just were like,
Ugh.
did our due diligence, peace out, like we're done. So they put her in foster care, and that was like the last of it. And I don't know how she got back. Yeah.
Ugh.
I don't know how she got back with him. So he eventually becomes her legal guardian and moved to Colorado with his 3 sons and Ruth David, who was Matthias David's former wife.
Oh.
So Mr. Sterling Peacock, his former wife,
Wait, where's Sterling?
apparently they're not married anymore.
Okay.
And I don't know if that happened like when he went to prison. But she now shacks up with Jacob David.
Oh, man.
Weird, right?
This is so bizarre.
I know.
This is such a bizarre story.
So weird. But in an interview with Inside Edition, Rachel said, so she does have some brain damage, but she apparently like can talk and like, make conversation. So I don't know how bad it is, but she says that she just wants to shove it all out. And she says, I want my family back. She said she doesn't remember a lot about the fateful day, but she did say that she jumped willingly, and she believes that the deaths of her family were ordained.
Oh, she is just so brainwashed.
Yeah, and there are some people that think that Immanuel David planned to commit suicide, had told his wife and told her, like, once I do, then this is what you need to do. Just because she was so dependent on him. Like, there's a lot of people that are like, I just don't think he would have done that without giving orders of what to do once he was gone.
Yeah.
Her uncle also stated that she likes to paint by numbers, drink coffee. She likes Neil Diamond. But he also said that over the years, now this stuff that I read, the last like really big accounts were in early 2000.
Okay.
There wasn't a lot of like reports past that. But he said that she had tried to commit suicide several times over the years in order to obey what she believes was a commandment by her father.
Oh my gosh, so she's just still trying to carry out what her dad told her.
Yeah. And she
Oh, that is like the worst thing I think I've ever heard.
right? So sad. She said that she likes going outside, but only gets to go out a couple times a week if someone takes her.
Oh.
She's like living in this house with these people, and like you can't take her outside.
Yeah, like you can
Just
stare
like
a couple times a week.
Put her in the corner.
Like, what?
They also told her that she's Eve.
Okay.
So if she's Eve, like, could you take her outside? Isn't
Yeah.
she like the top of the top up there?
Well, and Eve lived in a garden. She wants to be outside.
Right? Asses. So her family said she does lash out in anger and verbal commands about once a week. But she says she still believes her father is God and he will soon return.
Oh.
So she now is 60 and she lives in a care facility in Idaho because I believe both Sterling and Jacob, whoever he is, have passed away.
Died.
They died
Okay.
in like, one died in like 2007 and one in 2008. And I thought, like, when I was reading, I was like, man, they all died young. Like, what's going on? But they were like in their 60s and 70s. So they weren't like super young. But in my mind, that wasn't very long ago. So
That's still pretty, I mean, that's
But yeah.
still pretty young.
yeah, but not like, I was thinking like in their 30s. I don't know why. They were not that young. Paul Chipman, who is Jonathan David, and Gil Hibben, who is Peter David, are no longer members, and they want nothing to do with them.
Good job. They were smart ones.
Yeah, they even turned down recent invitations to rejoin because some of the like believers had said that they want to get the old gang back together. That's how they referred to it. And that once they did, then Immanuel David would be able to come back.
Oh, so it's their
It's like
fault.
it's like a movie, like, you got to
Yeah.
get all the pieces together and then
Yeah.
like this will happen.
for sure.
And they were like, no, hard pass on that.
yeah.
I'm not going to.
Screw you guys. I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah. And I can't remember. One of them had said that like they are kind of appalled that they even believed in it.
Oh,
And
good. Can you imagine after you step away from something like
Yeah.
that, you're like, what the actual hell was I thinking?
yeah. So they don't want anything to do with it. They're just living their vida loca without the David family behind them. Now, I did find one account because you had said, like, there had to have been, like, abuse. There had to have been this.
Yeah.
Because when I was first reading it, I was like, it's weird. Usually these cults have, like, weird sexual things,
Right.
like rituals, like kids are being abused. Like, there's always that weird kind of aspect to it. Now, I don't think Immanuel David, there was any sexual component to his cult.
Okay.
But there's one woman who is a 31-year-old nurse in Spokane, Washington, who was raised in the cult, and she remains extremely fearful of them, saying, I'm scared to death of them. She wants nothing to do with any of the members, including both of her parents, who still are believers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she does keep in contact with her maternal grandparents, who live here in Utah, and they're lifelong Mormons, and they're super upset that their daughter has remained a member of this cult for so long. So she had said that growing up in the cult, she would periodically get beaten. She said that once, when her and other children were laughing, Immanuel David took off his sock and shoved his foot in her mouth.
Oh, oh, sick.
So,
Ew.
to me, like, it's...
That's like worse than getting my ass beat.
Right? I was just gonna
That
say,
is disgusting.
it's, like, more, like, vile and, like, just
Ew.
violating having someone shove their foot in your mouth than for them to just, like, punch you. Why is and how, like, when kids are laughing, how is that your thought? Like, to take off your shoe, take off your sock, and shove your big old giant foot?
I'm totally threatening my kids with this tonight when I get home. Like, you laugh one more time.
Yeah, and no laughing. Like,
Wow.
right?
Okay.
She also said that when children would get disciplined, several adults would simultaneously pull on the child's limbs all at the same time until the kid would scream in agony. How weird is that?
Like a stretching
gonna-
device,
yeah,
like
like
a
they're
medieval
gonna-
stretching
yeah.
device.
Yeah. Like they're going to rip
Ew.
their body apart.
Ew, how can you do that to children?
Right? And, I mean, not that you should do it to any kids, but, like, it's not even your own kid. You're, like, ripping people's children's arms off.
Like, yeah, what?
I don't even know. So weird. But that was the only, like, accounts that I could see of, like, any abuse. It was just by this one woman.
Well, because I feel like it has to have happened because
For
there's,
sure.
like, having young kids, there is no way, especially boys, where they would, like, sit still and, like, be that polite
Right.
and not
All of
step
the
out of
time.
line. But
And for you
there's
to
no
have-
way.
Well, and for you to have 7 of them that
Yeah.
do that, like, you might have one kid that's like that. That's just their personality to be, like,
Oh, I wish.
quiet, you
I
know?
wish.
But, like, have 7 kids that act like that.
No.
Yeah. Super weird. So I'm
Yeah,
sure
they
there
were
was...
getting beat on the
Yeah.
regular,
Oh,
is
I'm
what
sure.
I think.
I'm sure. So around 2000, Dean Longo, in an interview, would be quoted saying, I think my brother actually believed in his own mind that he was God. He was that far off base. He was a very flawed mortal, so for him to have gained this kind of influence over people is amazing, particularly for it to still exist. Which I thought was, like, kind of
Agreed.
a good way
Yeah.
to, like, end it, where it was like, he was so flawed.
Yeah.
And for him to, like, get this many people to believe him, and then for this many years later,
For
for
them to
people
still
to still
believe.
believe that he is God and he's coming back, and, like, let's get the gang back together.
I'm telling you, I just need like an ounce of that in my
Right?
life.
Me too.
It's like so unfortunate that these people could have done so many things with their lives to like help other people or help and like be a productive
Yeah.
member of society or have these, you know, amazing careers or whatever. And
Yeah.
then they choose this route instead.
Yeah. Well, and you see it so many times where serial killers or murderers or whatever have really high IQs.
Yeah.
And it's like that fine line between, like, being a genius and being crazy. And they don't do the good things
No.
with it that
They're
they
always
could.
straddling in that line. And
Yeah.
then somehow they just go to the dark
Where you
side.
see all that, like, vandalism, like the spray painting and graffiti and stuff, you know,
Yeah.
these, like, gang members. And it's like, they're such good artists. Like, why don't you put that towards, like, being, like, an actual artist instead of, like, selling drugs and guns and then just, like, you know, spraying weird shit, like, taunting other gang members with your cool lettering on the wall. Like,
Right. Like do something that actually is productive
Right.
in society.
Yeah.
And not be a dirtbag.
Yeah. Or even when I was like a teenager working at a gas station and learning like the ways that people can scam you out of money, like at, like at the register. And I was like, I would have never thought of that. Why don't these people put that to like good use instead of being like, what's a way that I can steal from people?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, man, that's smart. I would have never.
It's like such a waste. And it's
really
it's so frustrating for those of us who are like not like that at all.
Right.
Like, come on.
Yeah.
Do you know what you could have done with your life?
Can't even get anyone to sponsor the podcast. Like, come on, people. Throw me a bone. But anyway, so
that was a good one.
that was pretty good, huh?
Yeah.
It was so crazy. I just can't imagine even getting to that point where you're gonna jump off a balcony.
No,
and push your kids.
I mean, we've talked about it, like, I don't know, a couple weeks ago or something, we were having a conversation about this kind of stuff. I think it was when we were talking about the Lori Vallows case and how he, like, convinced people, so many people. And it's like, if somebody just said that nowadays, but then you look at, like, all the biblical stories, and it's like, I guess they were probably actually proving that they had powers or making miracles happen, but these people are just all talk. You never see anything actually happen, but yet people believe them. And it's insane. Like, if somebody said that to me, I'd be like, you're freaking nuts. You have schizophrenia. And you need help.
Well, that's what I wonder too, because you know how schizophrenia is really common in men.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot
and
of times
younger.
It shows up when they're like 18 to like early 20s.
Early 20s.
And that's like right when he started hearing voices.
Yeah.
And, and a lot of times it does end up going to like kind of, I was reading a little bit about like religious psychosis.
Oh, yeah.
Where like that's kind of where it goes.
I almost guarantee he had schizophrenia. Yeah. He fits like all of the criteria.
Well, I mean, the church were like, no, you aren't God and you can't have all of our tithing money.
Yeah.
Like, but all these other people that were members of the church and I don't know, seemingly normal, I guess, but
is it just that people are looking for something?
I think so.
To believe in, I guess, but
I feel like, like you just find people in their vulnerable states or vulnerable moment and they just need something to help them believe.
Yeah. And it's so bizarre to me. So bizarre. But like, so weird.
Some of these people, it's like, they say that they could sell a refrigerator to the Eskimos or, like stuff like that where you're just like, I don't have that gift.
Nope.
I don't. And these people unfortunately do. Yeah. It's kind of scary.
It is so scary.
Yeah.
So scary.
That's why you just don't talk to people. Strangers or any of that type, and then you don't have to worry about being sucked into a cult.
That's right. That's why I don't either.
Yeah.
Unless I'm forced to.
Right.
So.
All right. Well, you guys can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at
Sinners Among Saints Podcast.
You can send us a Gmail
at sinnersamongsaintspodcast@gmail.com.
And you can follow us on Twitter at
capital SAS podcast _22. And remember to keep listening if you want in on the sin. Bye, guys.
Bye.